Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians of the DNA Company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is within your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by your personal doctor, therapist, or other healthcare professionals.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the DNA Talks podcast. I am Dr. Lara Varden, Dean of the DNA University and an in-house clinician here at the DNA Company. I have the deep honor today to actually interview someone whom I have read 35 years ago and have followed just a tremendous human being, doctor, a pioneer, Dr. Jacob Israel Liberman. He is a pioneer in the fields of light, vision, and consciousness. He's the author of Luminous Life, How the Science of Light Unlocks the Art of Living. His other books, Light, Medicine of the Future. That's the very first book that I read of his that really opened my eyes. Yes, pun intended. Also, he has written Take Off Your Glasses and See, as well as Wisdom from an Empty Mind, who he wrote that book with his son, Eric. Originally trained as an optometrist, and he's a PhD in vision science. He has his own spontaneous eyesight healing back in 1976 which inspired a lifelong exploration into the transformative power of light. And we're going to dive a little bit into his background and what that journey looked like for him. He served as president of leading professional organizations, invented FDA-cleared vision training technology, and received international awards for his groundbreaking contributions to light medicine. He's a sought-after speaker. Dr. Liberman has addressed more than 2,000 audiences worldwide, sharing how light illuminates the profound connection between vision, consciousness, and the art of living. Dr. Liberman, thank you so much for being here with us today. This is actually one of my bucket list conversations that I can't wait to geek out with you on and to learn even more and to have our audience be enlightened by the information you have to share. So, welcome.
Dr. Varden, the pleasure is so mutual. Living on Maui, Hawaii, the mornings are so beautiful, and so I get to start my day with you, and that is so exciting to me because you are truly a pioneer in your area of expertise, and more importantly than our degrees and our work and all those things is that my sense is that we're beginning to realize that the thing that is most important, which few people are successful at, is the art of living. And so the real question is, how can we take our insights, our direct experiences, the information we gained from science as one aspect of science, and the knowing that we gain from direct experience, which is where the mystic attains their research, and combine those so that our life literally becomes a living meditation. And that is where life has taken me at this moment of time. And I am just, the light's coming out of my eyes, just so delighted to be here with you today because it's so beautiful just to be able to share with a contemporary, another person on that same journey, the things that have touched us. So I'm excited. I'm ready. I have no idea where we're going to go. And that's what's really got me on the edge of my seat.
How joyful and delicious. I love it. And I really look at life as tapping in to that spark of source, of God source, of all that is, that I see myself a transducer of that love light, the of utilizing the the gifts that have been given to me for the purpose of why I am here, to be of service to others, to shine that light, to be a reflection of that light. And light being so important, being so healing. I remember listening to an interview you had done, getting into the biblical aspects about, God said, let there be light. And that was before the creation of the sun and the moon.
Right.
It really goes back to that initial spark. And I think that when we bring it down to the most basic, and realizing that that light, that energy, everything is energy and frequency, and recognizing the power of that and how that connects all of us. It's absolutely amazing, and only infuses the understanding of us, the physical human beings here on earth, of all things, because everything has DNA,
Right.
that it is all connected. Even we as stardust, being a part of the connectedness of everything, the DNA that is interwoven through everything, and that there is light in that, and light emanating from our DNA that also receives those photons, the light, the packets of energy, of information that then transmits and creates a cascade from that information.
Right.
And it is so amazing.
I couldn't have said
So,
that any better. Thank you so much. Something that came to me that I think is just so important, from the time when we first entered this world from our mother's womb, there was no awareness of gender. There was no awareness of skin coloration, religiosity. There was no preferences. And then as life begins, everything that goes on from the name we are given, which is based on the sex that we have and the clothing we wear and the way our room is designed, and everything starts to create a persona, which of course means mask. Persona comes from the Latin personare, which means to peer through. What the meaning suggests is that we are not the mask. We are that which is peering through. Now, why do I mention that? You mentioned a few moments ago connecting with the source. And of course, part of our conditioning is that the intelligence of life, which has been named many, many different things, even though it has no name, is somewhere out there. God is in heaven. But I discovered something long time ago. I remember when I first studied meditation. I think it was 1971. And it was all about quieting the mind, and so on. And what I noticed while I was meditating is that it wasn't so much for me about quieting anything. What became evident was that I was not the mind. I was something that was observing this thing we call mind. Now, we've been trained to use the mind for everything. It's my mind. I don't mind it. And everything is identified with me and my mind. And so the spontaneous regurgence that's going on in the mental activity all the time, we often think, oh, I thought that. But when you speak to pioneers and visionaries that have come across something that had not been recorded before, and you speak with them, how did you come up with that? And when they really share with you the honest truth, they have no idea from where it came. Einstein was once being interviewed, and the journalist said, "Oh, Mr. Einstein, how did you discover the theory of relativity?" And Einstein started laughing and he said, "Oh, that happened while I was playing the violin." And the point is that this information or little moment of insight comes to us rather than from us. It's something that's coming to us because it's part of our purpose for being. And this is why I often say what catches your eye is looking for you. It's guiding your eye, your whole system as to the next step to take. Why I'm mentioning this is this idea that we are separate from Source, or that we really need to reconnect with Source. My sense is we're never separate from Source, and it may be that our essence is Source, because this field of awareness, an infinite ocean of eyes, is what is ultimately aware of what we experience as the external world. It's continually aware of all the somatic information that is provided, and it's continually aware 24 hours a day. It never sleeps, of this entity we call mind. But because we've been identified as the mind, we're often totally unaware of the impulses that come to us rather than from us. But when that identification is so aligned within us, then the activity of what we call mind, without doing anything, begins to subside. You go to bed one night and the surround sound speakers are right here, and you wake up in the morning. While you were sleeping, someone moved the speakers away. And so, what's occurred in my life is from someone who was trained that they weren't enough as they were, someone who didn't read a lot as a kid, who had some sort of reading issues and began to believe that I wasn't smart, someone who at times had a very active mind, not just due to thinking, but I'm someone that spent several years having panic attacks after an ending of a relationship that came as a tremendous shock to me because I wasn't aware. And so the things I'm sharing, I'm not sharing because I read them somewhere or someone spoke about them. I shared them because the insights, thank God, came to me at a time where I wasn't sure whether I'd make it from day to day. Something had to uncover how do we shut down that noise so that we can see, hear, and know what is truly seeking us and guiding us? And so today, at almost 78, I'm rarely aware of chatter. And what my life is about is allowing the intelligence of life to take me continually rather than thinking, making choices, and all of these ideas that sound really interesting. But I've spent almost the last 50 years experimenting. And of course, as an experiment is to see, well, what actually occurs. Having worked with many thousands of children that had learning issues early in my career, I discovered that they were brilliant and
Yeah.
yet they were labeled. And what I began to realize is most of the time it's not the disease that kills us, it's the diagnosis. We can eliminate many of today's dis-ease and diseases, but it's almost impossible to eliminate them from the mind. Even though everyone's trying to change the mind, what I have really found produces that quantum leap, if you will, is the recognition that we are not mind. We are that which is aware of. As that has become more and more crystal clear, and something inside knows it by heart, what we call mind, I'm sure, is still functioning and doing the job it's designed to do, but it's in the background. It's not the foreground. In that sense, I am blessed to have noticed the light that was looking for me and has guided me into this. And so my work today is, I have not practiced in the optometric profession for many, many years. I left that in the 80s. I moved to Colorado in the late 80s and wanted to share many of the things that I was stunned by in terms of working with people and seeing things that I have never heard of, was not supposed to occur. And so the reality of energy and vibration and resonance and these kinds of terms that we hear today really touched me back then. And so in 1989, I opened up the Aspen Center for Energy Medicine. It may have been the first
Beautiful.
time that term was used. I had never heard the term before. I did that for years, working with people that came into town and flew in and so on. Now, I enjoy working with ordinary people as an ordinary person and entering into a special type of friendship with them. I don't work as a doctor patient or coach client or mentor mentee way of looking at things. I see we are two individuals who find themselves walking the same journey of life. And since we all would love to have a little guidance, whether it's our mothers or fathers or our dear friends or lovers at some point in life, we all are going through a little bit of the dark night of the soul. And so we hold hands for a period of time. It's all on a first name basis. And it's all about the realization that we're all in the same boat. And thank God we're all in the same boat. And
Yeah, absolutely.
because we have company. And so
Hmm.
my work has really been about becoming successful at life, at living, and how can we utilize light or what we experience as color to profoundly support us in that part of the journey? How can we use some very simple awareness expanding techniques to see where the eyes and mind are focused, and are they focused at the same place at the same time, or are the eyes looking at one place while the mind is focused somewhere else, which makes presence difficult. And I've also delved into a whole body of work that I was fortunate enough to evolve that allows one to experience what occurs when they're in a learning situation and attempt to think ahead or figure it out in order to get the right answer we were all trained to do. And in that process, they discover the truth about the process of thinking or worrying, which is it doesn't produce the answer. The answer actually occurs when the thinking ceases. And where it comes from is magical. But the truth is, it's been magic from the time we came from our mothers. The moment we emerged from our mother's womb, something started breathing us. Something began pumping our hearts, regulating our blood pressure, our glucose levels, our hormone levels. The timing of everything in life and biology cannot be more important. And so it's not something we are regulating, it's something that is occurring from the first breath to the last, always functioning. And yet we've been led to believe we have to make it happen. And
Right.
so, what my work is about is recognizing something that I discovered when I was working on the last book. I noticed that the word belief is very common in today's language. And so I looked up the word belief, and of course, it meant the same as idea, thought, concept, hypothesis, theory, and so on. My eyes then scanned down to the antonyms, and I was blown away that the first word they landed on that meant the opposite of belief was
Mm-hmm.
truth. And all of a sudden, I realized that everything that comes from the mind is belief. It's not truth. And so it's become very important to me, the truth, which is something I experience as what occurs when awareness is unfiltered, when perhaps we have an instance of time when whatever is seeing through the eyes of God, is seeing all that is, it knows all that is, it's aware of everything simultaneously, and it isn't us like the physical machine. It's that which is continually aware of all that is, which is the
Mm-hmm.
final set of eyes. I remember I was contacted by a natural vision teacher who's well known a couple years ago, and he said, "Gee, I'd love to interview you." I said, "Oh, I'd love that. That would be wonderful." And he said, "What do you want to talk about?" I pretty much do everything in my life live. There's no
Right.
preparation for talks or anything. It's totally live. And what comes out is how to improve your vision by doing nothing. And he started laughing. And sometime after the podcast told me that was his most popular podcast, because every
Wow.
time that I share about the improvement of my vision or other things that I've experienced, people say, "Well, how do you do that?" And that's part of our big conditioning. From the
Right.
time we were little kids, people said, "Well, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to be when you grow up?" And so our whole life has been about becoming something when we already are and doing something. People always ask you, "Well, what do you do?" And what's really of significance is who we are, not what we do. But we're so focused on doing. And I have found that the real profound epiphanies and transformations in our life is not from doing as much as it is from seeing. That it is awareness that is curative. And so a lot has to do with noticing from that place that notices, and then noticing how that level of noticing is actually the most potent neuroplastic transmission there is. That literally the brain begins to rewire itself when it notices something it has not noticed. In fact, every time we have a direct experience, something new, the software of our humanity is updated all by itself.
Right.
Don't have to do anything. I saw this as a child because when I was about, I don't know, 11 or 12, I'd always been sensitive. I saw this brown
Mhm.
spot on my mother's calf. And I said, "What is that?" She says, "I don't know." And I said, "You should ask Aunt Dora." Aunt Dora was my mother's sister who happened to be a medical doctor, a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
And Aunt Dora said, "You need to go to your doctor to look at that." And it turned out that that was, at the time, perhaps the worst cancer you could have. It was called a black melanoma. They removed it. It was a black melanoma. My mother had to go through some very radical surgeries to remove all the lymph nodes from one of her legs. And what she ended up with, she was only about 4'11". One leg was normal size, and the other leg's diameter was 6 to 7 times. Some way or another, they said they thought she'd only live a month. My mother not only lived another 51 years, but my mother was diagnosed with cancer 3 more times. Had to have a
Goodness.
mastectomy initially and some other things. And there was no cancer in her body when she passed. But my mother was me in many ways, me like her, very inspired. And so this woman who didn't drive a car used to take 3 buses from where we lived in Miami to Jackson Memorial Hospital and would spend the day, unbeknownst to anyone at the hospital, walking through the cancer ward and speaking to all the people in every room and sharing her story in hopes that allowing them to know that miracles can occur and that she was a living example of it. And I can't tell you the number of letters my mother received from people that survived, were profoundly moved by whatever it was that guided my mother to be a helper, to be a saint, if you will. That's what moves my life. I'll give you a quick example and then we'll go to anything else you'd like. I had to go to the ophthalmologist, no, toward the end of last week. I
Mhm.
came into the office and there were 2 receptionists, and I went to the one on the right, and there was a gentleman standing in front of the other one, maybe to schedule his next appointment or pay his bill or whatever. And something caught my eye about him, and I immediately knew he was a trendsetter. Now, I don't know how I knew that, but something just came. And I looked at him, and something moved me to go to him. I said, "Excuse me, but I get a sense that you've always been way ahead of the curve." He said, "How did you know that? That's true." I said, "I have no idea, but some way it came to me, and I wanted to let you know that I saw you." And his eyes started welling up. He said, "Come here, brother." He hugged me, and he said, "I love you. I really love you." Now, I have a few instances like that every single day.
Mhm.
They just spontaneously occur, and whatever is catching my eye moves me toward it. I don't have to move myself. There's no decision process that I am aware of. Something moves me there as if it was someone I fell in love with and could do nothing about it. It just moved me there. And if I didn't fall in love, it wouldn't move me there. I couldn't do anything about that either. The most profound experiences of my life are when I allow the intelligence of life to utilize me as an instrument. Even right now, the listeners of your podcast might say, gee, he's maybe saying something interesting. I have a secret to share. I am not saying anything. I don't know what's saying it. I don't know how it occurs, but I've had the pleasure of speaking in front of lots of live audiences, some with lay individuals, some are filled with scientists and medical doctors, and I haven't prepared a talk since 1977. I was invited
I
to
can.
I was invited to do a talk at Florida International University when I used to practice in Miami, and was doing some very interesting work with children that had been diagnosed as learning disabled, dyslexics, attentional difficulties, and so on. And this was a group of master's and PhD candidates that I was speaking with. And of course, they wanted me to speak about things I did every day, things I knew by heart. But I had been trained. Talk, it has to be perfect. Now, we didn't have computers back then. Nobody had imagined at the time doing a PowerPoint, and I've never used one. And so we used to write our notes on little 3 by 5 inch index cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were doing a talk, people would be in an auditorium. You're usually on a stage, indicating that you're higher on some level, and they give you a podium. Of course, the podium was the place where you could keep your notes and use your notes and hope nobody in the audience knew that you were actually reading your notes. And so they introduced me, and I started to walk out with my little stack of cards, and they all fell on the floor. And I went into a cold sweat. And during those times, when you did a talk, you had to wear a shirt and a tie, a jacket. When I got to the podium, I was drenched. The sweat was dripping off my face and head, and I was frozen. I couldn't remember anything. And I sat there, I stood there and I looked at the audience, and I could see by their expressions they were wondering what the hell's going on here. And all of a sudden, I take a deep breath and I say to them, let me share with you what just happened. And so I shared with them what I just shared with you, how I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
make it perfect. Even though these were things I did every day, I was led to believe I had to prepare. We've been trained to prepare, to make the best impression. And so I did all of that, and my index cards dropped on the floor, and I picked them up and I said, here they are. And the room breaks out in laughter. And for a second, I think they're laughing at me. And then someone says, happens to us all the time. And all of a sudden, I realize, oh my God, we're all suffering from the same disease. We've been led to believe that we're not enough, that we have
Right.
a problem that requires fixing. And all of a sudden, something started speaking me. I cannot tell you what was shared, but this 45-minute talk went for 3 hours and they wouldn't allow me to leave.
Wow.
And they spoke to me for another 2 hours after that. And that was the very last time I ever prepared anything, because I had a direct experience which allowed me to realize or to directly see what happens when that preparation isn't done. And what I realized is that when we eliminate that stress, trying to get it perfect, trying to be accepted, trying to pass the test, whatever the hell it is, there's a transmission that uses us as a vessel for communicating something. And I later was surprised when I looked up the word genius, which, we always associated with someone
Right.
like Einstein. And when
Mm-hmm.
I started looking at the origins of the word genius, means a genius is actually our guiding spirit. That's the original definition. It's not
Mm-hmm.
someone that has a big brain. Maybe it's someone that has a big heart and allows life to guide them. And then something comes through that they could never create, even with all of the thought in the world and the highest IQs. It's just
Right.
something that you say, oh my God. So I know I've been sharing for a while about everything other
It's
than light. You know,
We'll dive into that.
yeah,
And actually, something that I have noticed that has been a golden thread throughout all of the stories and the people that you have been talking about, to me, has encompassed in the word inspiration.
right,
Because truly, when we think about inspiration, it's based in Latin, meaning to breathe into,
right,
which itself comes from the word spirare, meaning to breathe. That term really evolving to encompass the idea of being influenced or guided, often
right,
through divine or supernatural means.
right.
And really, that inspiration reflecting both a physical and even a metaphorical sense of breathing life or ideas into something. And I know that there has been evidence where an inventor or someone who is more receptive to inspiration, not just one person, but people, have ideas about something new, discovering something, but it's not just that one person, maybe several people all over the world who don't even know each other.
Right.
That coming up with that idea, because I think that the inspiration gets sent out, is blanketed upon us and whomever is most receptive to receive, like you are
It's
saying,
it's coming
being
to
drawn
us.
toward, coming in, exactly, and then we are just picking up on it and then being able to synthesize and translate that information into something tangible. And you were mentioning about belief and truth. The thoughts that came to me when you said that is that belief, yes, usually things that you have an understanding or that you believe in, and I know that's using the basis of the word, that is more etheric, it's nebulous, it's
Right.
it's not something that you can really put your hands on, where truth, I think, ends up being something more of that tangible, that provability, that more basic scientific, that this is truth, this table is hard, I can feel it, I can see it, I can measure it. Where belief is more of that, you don't have that tangibility.
You
But
know,
I think more and more, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when there is a direct experience, again, for instance, I had an experience in 1976 while I was meditating, and even though my eyes were closed, I saw something that I had never seen before and couldn't even imagine. And when I came out of that meditation, my eyesight was measurably 300% better. But the prescription, the optical measurements of my eyes had not changed at all.
Interesting.
Now, I was led to believe that was impossible. But since I knew that it wasn't impossible, not because there was some research done on it, because I had the direct experience. And I realized there is obviously something else that is seeing within us that is beyond just the eye and brain and mind.
Mhm.
If something like that lasted an hour, you would say, oh my God, that's amazing. But it's lasted for 47 years.
So this is something, again, it's not where people have to believe. This is truth because it is tangible, it's measurable. Actually, I remember hearing you being interviewed talking about this, that you said that, obviously before you wore glasses, you needed glasses to drive, to see clearly, etc. During your experience, during your meditative experience, that whatever the inspiration, whatever happened, allowed you to see with such clarity, as you have said, 300 times better. And then you went to your office
Yeah,
and you walked yourself through
right,
the
right,
measurements of testing, looking at your eye chart, being able to read the tiny little
right,
letters
right.
down at the bottom without glasses, but yet you're saying that the measurements, of a prescription still held, but yet you could see.
And what's interesting is at the time I was nearsighted and had a significant amount of astigmatism.
Hmm.
Now I am farsighted and have even more astigmatism, and it should make it impossible for me to see up close. As you know, we get beyond the age of 40 or 45, and all of a sudden we discovered God made a mistake. Our arms are not long enough. We can't see. Um, I'm still able to read and see all the things on my desktop and your face. And so if I went to the eye doctors and they
Hmm.
did what's called a refraction, they would find you need glasses. And yet they can't believe that I can actually read the eye chart and pass the driver's test and read, you know, a bottle with a prescription on it. So, what's important is not, oh, what can I do for that to happen? I have no idea. It
Hmm.
might be different for every person. What's important is that things can occur that we were taught to believe are impossible and are frequently not
Hmm.
even acknowledged because they don't fit the model. I have developed some vision training equipment, one that was taken through the FDA. And I remember I read some research that indicated that the onset of presbyopia is the change that we notice after the age of 40, where there's less focusing ability in the eye. That's usually when we start wearing over the counter readers or reading glasses. And I read some research that said the onset of that was related to our longevity, that the later the onset, usually the longer the life. And
Hmm.
because this device I developed improved that function, I went to a half a dozen heads of vision training departments at different optometric colleges. And I said, I'd love for you to consider doing some research on this. This is so important. If we could delay the onset of this, aside from the fact that people would still be able to see without their glasses, would that impact their longevity? And everybody turned me down. Why? Not because they didn't find it fascinating, they did.
Hmm.
They all said the same damn thing. Are you kidding me? This will turn the optical industry on its head. And it was
Wow.
concerned about the disturbance of the status quo, the disturbance of the $40 billion a year industry that relies on such things. I remember doing a workshop in Australia in the 90s, a workshop for optometrists. And before the event began, all of them filled out a questionnaire, their eyeglass prescriptions, how long they'd been wearing glasses, and pretty much everyone wore glasses. And then they were checked by one of the doctors there to see exactly what their eyesight was without their glasses on. And then they were instructed to see would they consider doing an experiment. And the only thing they had to do was leave their glasses off. Well, the biggest complaint within about 20 minutes is I can't hear you as well without my glasses on. All I did was share with them. They didn't do any exercises, any vision. They didn't do anything, but I just shared with them my experience. 4 hours later, a different doctor checked the eyesight of all of them. 6 hours later, checked everybody's eyesight, and everybody's eyesight significantly improved
Wow.
at a significant level. And they were all amazed by that. And I said, if we were kids and we did something that was really fun, usually we would say, can we do it again? So I said to them, you want to keep going? And they said, sure. I said, okay, I'm going to ask you to leave your glasses off for just 24 hours. I don't want you to do anything different. Just leave your glasses off for 24 hours. Are there some of you that could drive those of you home that need glasses to drive so that you're assured that you're going to be safe or your husbands can pick you up? They did it. The following morning, they came in and a different doctor examined all of them, and all of their eyesight had once again, even to a higher significance level, improved. One woman, an Asian woman, whose eyesight without her glasses was 2600, which means at
Wow.
20 feet away, the smallest letter or number she could see was 10, 11, or 12 inches high. Huge. She came in the following morning and she was able to fully read one line less than 2020, which is tiny. They were all amazed and they went home that day and returned the following day. I said, anything else happened? And they were all talking about how amazed they were, how much their vision improved by merely removing something that they had been addicted to. They had been habituated to wear all the time. And this
Right.
young lady whose eyesight improved 600%, she was rather upset. And I said, what's happening? She said, I came home last night. I was so excited. I've been wearing glasses since I'm a tiny little girl. And I shared with my husband how excited I was. And the first word out of his mouth was, oh my God, that's terrible. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean it's terrible? He says, how will you sell glasses? And it was all about the business
Yeah.
side of it. It's not about that the doctors are indoctrinated to sell glasses, but we've been trained in a system where the possibility of vision improvement is never mentioned. It's not possible. And so many businesses, the major part of the business is the marketing part of it. And so
Right.
I guess what I'm sharing about and what's very exciting about what both of us are involved in is
Hmm.
that, I was trained that disease is contagious. But what I discovered is that wellness is even more contagious. And that
Yes.
if we are living examples of what's possible after a significant back injury from an accident, from a
Hmm.
car, or what's possible with
Yeah.
someone who once wore glasses, or what occurred with my mother, or any number of things. All of a sudden, life looks exactly the same, but is totally, totally different.
Right.
My
It's through the
very,
perception.
I tell people I do my best work out in the streets now. I just,
Nice.
you know, I just find myself moved to interact with someone or something that I've never seen before, that I will probably never see
Hmm.
again, and that I will never forget. And they will probably never forget either. So I keep increasing the balance in my bank account of good feelings. And that has a profound impact on our lives. We all swallow vitamins and minerals and meditate and do yoga, or we're vegan. We've been led to believe we have to do this and exercise and all these things. And yet there's something else that happens by itself without us doing anything, that allows us to have a very special life experience. And that very special life experience, which I'm having with you right this moment, is just profoundly luminous for me. It aligns me with everything that is core to my being. And anyway, I'm going to give it back to you, because obviously we could keep this going for a long
Actually, yes, we
time.
could. Oh, this is beautiful. I mean, honestly, I thought we were going to be getting more into um, light, its capacity of healing different frequencies. How that works into consciousness, and I do want to do that, but I know that we do have a little bit of a time construct, and I have to host a webinar this evening that I have to hop on in about a half hour. Uh, Actually, what I would really just thoroughly enjoy, if it would work in your schedule,
Yes,
uh, in the very near future, thank you.
yes,
um, I want to continue this conversation, because I know as a listener, I would be like, I want to know more on what can I do to move into that space, because people still are working into that. I do something, something happens. And I know that we have been talking about the allowance, the setting back, and having that healing capacity infuse us almost without having to do anything,
right.
almost passively. But I feel like we still need to bring along the audience.
I'll give you the
Yes,
teaser.
I would love to have that, please.
So, what I'd like to share is maybe the most important discovery I made.
Mhm.
Light is invisible. We experience brightness, which is a perceptual phenomenon. Light itself is invisible. Photons are formless. Renowned quantum physicist David Bohm, he's passed away, but he used to be known as Einstein's spiritual son. He was a theoretical quantum physicist, had a famous expression, all matter is frozen light. What he was saying is that the energy from where life emerges is the energy of light. And so I've always had a feeling that light was the formless energy and that life was the formed transformation that mysteriously occurs. Albert Szent-Györgyi, the discoverer of vitamin C and a Nobel laureate, said, all the energy on earth, all the energy in our body is derived from the sun. So they are essentially saying that we are creatures of light, that light is not only fundamental to our makeup, it is continually nourishing us. Now, we've been led to believe that our nourishment comes from consuming food, which is actually frozen light. The plant converts the light energy into something solid, and then we either eat the plants or the animals, and so on. And that which we ingest is the fuel we've been all taught that fuels our cells to be able to handle all of their cellular activity. But that only accounts for about a third of the energy that is produced by the mitochondria. 2/3 is directly coming through the ingestion of light rather than the ingestion of food. And so allowing the light to come in, most of which enters through the eyes, and most of the light that enters the eyes is not for eyesight. It literally takes a different route from the retina of the eye to a part of the hypothalamus, which we call the brain's brain. And it goes to a part of the hypothalamus where the site of the biological clock is. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And that's the hypothalamus controls the autonomic nervous system, the endocrine system, the initiation of our stress reactions, and so on. And then that information is also shared with the pineal. The pineal gland, and often termed today the pineal organ, is also called the regulator of regulators. Very profound impact in the body. And when the pineal receives that information that light carries from the eye and from the hypothalamus, it simultaneously shares that with every cell in the body, so that every cell in the body updates its software about what's happening in the external world and utilizes that update to synchronize itself with Mother Nature. In other words, built into our humanity is a mechanism that is continually merging us with the cosmos, bringing us into a state of oneness. And that oneness, or we call non duality, is also synonymous with illumination, with awakening, with enlightenment, and so on. What I started to discover in the late 70s is that every person I spoke to seemed to have certain colors they liked and certain colors they disliked. I thought, gee, that was interesting. I then started looking at all these different theories about colors, and everyone said, oh, this color does this color does this color does that. But then I soon realized that wasn't true either. That's like saying everyone will have the same response to eating an apple, but we know that that isn't the case. And so I then started to physiologically monitor my patients. At that time, biofeedback was sort of something interesting. So I bought a little device and I would hook up my patients and I would have them imagine colors, look at colors, or look at light of different wavelengths. And I noticed something really interesting. The colors they felt at ease with seemed to cause the body to go, ah, and go into a state of harmony physiologically.
Right.
But the colors that they were uncomfortable imagining or looking at triggered a classical stress reaction within the body.
Right.
And then people started sharing with me after these sessions that all of a sudden they had flashbacks about something they had totally forgotten that occurred very early in their life, or something that they were aware of that was traumatic for them. Or sometimes they said they had a memory, but they had no idea why they had this memory because they don't remember anything about that. And I started realizing that the colors we were uncomfortable with represented the vibrations within the experiences we had that we were not in resonance with. And
Mm.
it was either unresolved issues that may have occurred at an earlier time in life, or it may have been unresolved issues that occurred in the lives of our ancestors, but was passed on from one generation to the next. And I know that to also be factual because I've had direct experiences of things my father went through in Poland as a boy before he escaped at the age of 15. But I experienced them as though they were occurring to me rather than my father. The point is, I began to realize that our color preferences not only allowed certain portions of the spectrum to enter our being and others to in some way attempted to be blocked, but they were related to unresolved issues, which are often the cause that takes us from a state of ease to a state of dis-ease. In other words, the stress that all of us encounter, which we say might be as high as 90% of the reason we are ill at times.
Mm-hmm.
So, my work over the years has been utilizing micro doses of color. I used to call it human or color homeopathy, taking tiny amounts of different portions of the spectrum and having people introduce them on a daily basis, not just
Nice.
certain ones, but all of them, rotating
Right.
through the entire spectrum, maybe for a minute in the morning. You know, if you've got the right medicine, the person will start to improve rather quickly. But there's no amount of the wrong medicine that will get that to happen. And so what I
Right.
noticed is a tiny amount of light can go a very long ways. And so I have developed ways of utilizing what we perceive as color, which are different wavelengths of the light spectrum, to help desensitize us
Right.
from the habitual triggers that catalyze stress. And what I've noticed is that when people are able to become comfortable with something that used to feel uncomfortable, their life changes. The other thing that I discovered, and this is after many thousands of people,
Mm-hmm.
is that the colors that they have a subtle allergic reaction to, they also notice that the part of their body, the chakra area of their body, that's represented by the same color is often the place where their body shows some issues. Now, this is
Right.
this is all empirical information that
Mm-hmm.
first made itself evident to me in maybe 1978, and I have been just noticing this occurring over and over and over again. And it's been very exciting for me, um, because rather than using color to
Mm-hmm.
treat disease, I utilize color to help someone to become unconditionally accepting, to come to a place where they're no longer from a place, I like this, I don't like this, but
Right.
to come to a place where things that occur in their life don't push them over, don't create overwhelm, anxiety, stress, and so on. And then the physiological representations of that as well. So my work is utilizing color homeopathy through a simple kit that I've created. I used to develop light therapy units that physicians, optometrists, therapists would purchase to use in their practice, but they were
Mm-hmm.
thousands of dollars, and making medical devices is a very complicated thing. And so I wanted to see, can we create an affordable way for people to do this work at home, sometimes with a
Mm-hmm.
guide like myself, but many people just utilize the protocols that I have suggested and working very gently, gradually increase their receptivity to light, to the full spectrum of light, and notice that as that occurs, they become more receptive to the full spectrum of life. And
Beautiful.
so that's a piece that we can
Yeah.
expand upon.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
when,
Actually, when we have you back, I really want to unpack that more.
oh, yeah,
And I also want to start weaving in and talking about some of the genes that can be affected through this, especially when we are talking about mood and behavior,
right,
dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, the different receptors, and the genetic presentations on how people can be affected, and then, you know, even theoretically, how people can have this type of light therapy integrated,
right, right,
and looking at the dynamics of it. Now, I don't have any scientific data on this, but it's like, this is where my brain starts going on how can these be integrated, to understand the differences, and really getting into a personalized medicine, which functional genomics, I think, is such a foundational piece of. Also, something else that I want to kind of give a teaser to, and also to keep myself to remember to talk about this, is speaking about people who are blind,
Right.
people who are either born blind or, had an accident and, cannot see anymore, or who have lost their eyes,
Right.
or how does light and light therapy work on them? Also, working in deprivation tanks, complete darkness, and how that utilization and realization and quietness, how that can work into the significance of light therapy. There's so many avenues that I want to travel down and talk to you about, and really start getting into more of how light is healing, getting into some of the mechanisms of action, some of the different types of light, what you have found over the course of your lifetime, your work, your research, and how all of this works. Because again, one of the things that I had told you before we had even started, that I find part of my path is bridging the gap between the scientific, the spiritual, the metaphysical, and understanding how much science there is there, and helping people to understand and to come together to see the
Right.
connectedness through all of that, and the healing benefits, the healing power of that when they are open. So as we are closing up, and again with the excitement of our part two, um, where can people find you? Where can they read your books, learn about you, and dive in a little bit more before they hear our next episode together, or even after they hear our next episode together? Where can they find
The
you?
first thing is the website is Jacob Lieberman, and Lieberman is spelled Lib as in boy, Erman, and that's .org, jacoblieberman.org. There's a
Mhm.
lot of information there, a lot of audio recordings, video recordings that they can just access about a variety of topics that might be of interest to them. Uh, it's not a marketing website. Um, it's it's a place where we share things that we feel are important and valuable for people. Obviously, they can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, even though I don't have anything to do with that. I don't know how that works, and so on. But we try to just put out things that are valuable. They can go to YouTube or Google my name, and there are varieties of podcasts and presentations and so on if they want to listen. And that's a really nice place to begin. We don't sell books, but all the books are pictured on our website, and we'll take them to Amazon and places that deal in selling books. That's a wonderful place to begin. I can't wait to do it again. It's so exciting. And there was something you said about,
Oh, personalized medicine,
yes,
personalized
and
care.
what I
Yes.
love about that is I love what our science contributes to all of this. But the scientific method is attempting to measure what occurs under sterile conditions.
Yes.
Life is not sterile.
Not at all.
And when you eliminate all the things that occur in everyday life and try to find, the magic substance, I think
Mm.
we miss the whole picture because the magic substance is in the balance of all of it, not a single item. And so for me, the empirical information that I shared It's not part of a piece of research, even though I've published in peer-reviewed journals and so on. But it's so important because I want to know how average human beings are responding to something in their everyday life. And that to me is really important. Anyway, I know you have to run. I'm sending you a big hug from Maui,
Oh,
Hawaii. Thank you so much.
thank
Are you on the
you.
East Coast?
Mm, I am. I'm in Vermont.
Beautiful.
And it's just a beautiful green. We had a gorgeous morning. I got to go out for a walk with my dogs and my granddaughters, almost two and a
Beautiful.
half, and just had a wonderful, wonderful day. And, this really has been such a highlight of my day as well. I want to thank you so much. And I know I was a lot more quiet in this because I was just absorbing all of the information that you had. And, but I can't wait for our next one to really, tease out and talk about and nerd out on a lot of the other information that I'm sure our audience is just itching to hear about. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your love. It is just so evident, so palpable, and I thank you so much. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in today for this episode of the DNA Talks podcast. This is very meaningful, and I hope that you are walking away with something profound, something that sparks a seed of something of inspiration in you to move forward and to come back and listen to part 2. So don't forget, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, especially if there's a certain topic that you'd like to hear us discuss. Don't forget that you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, also from our DNA Way app. Please download that. You can access all of our information from there. And if you wish to learn more, add us to your list of liked podcasts so that way you'll be up to date when the next one will be. And speaking of up to date, if you want to find us on Instagram, you can find us at DNA Talks Podcast, as well as my own at Dr. Varden Official. Thank you once again, everyone, for spending the time to listen to us today. And we will see you at the next one. And same with you, Dr. Lieberman. Thank you, thank you, thank you so
Thank
much.
you as
And I
well.
can't wait for our part 2.
Me too.
Mwah.
All
Many
right.
blessings.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.